McGraw in the Morning continues on the Big 550 KTRS.
621 here in St. Louis. Every Tuesday, we like to check in with Trey Hardin on McGraw Millhaven here and Kelly Jackson with KSDK Channel 5 sitting in. Trey Hardin, welcome back, Big 550 KTRS.
Great to be back with you, McGraw. Kelly, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Let's talk first about Syria because Secretary of State John Kerry made no bones about the fact that they have used some type of chemical weapons. That now is a whole new ballgame and a whole new world. What is the tea leaves saying in Washington, D.C. about this?
Well, I mean, it's just, everyone is seeing the horrific images on TV and and we've heard lots of different rhetoric about threshold that for reaching military action. It's really a sad situation what's going on over there, and I think that you have genuine bipartisan support anytime that a president is in a situation where they have to make a decision like this. I think that members of both sides of the aisle are seeing the same thing we're all seeing on TV, and are all saying the same thing, that this is just intolerable. It's inhumane, it's immoral, and the United States has an obligation as a leader of the free world to engage and deter the Serbian government from doing anything further.
There's a lot of interesting things here. You and I watch news on a daily basis. There were rumors and reports that chemical weapons were used before. There were no pictures and no video, and so there wasn't this sort of march to do something. Now that there are pictures and there's video, it seems like that video has gotten these elected officials to actually move.
Well, of course it's going to. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, there's always going to be intelligence that the president and members of Congress are getting reports on a daily basis about what's happening around the world. And I have to imagine that there was intelligence reports prior to this that was confirming use of chemical weapons. It is a shame that sometimes we wait to take action until it really starts hitting home with the American people and the people who are going to be ultimately holding you accountable by voting for you to stay in office or voting you out. But yes, it does seem that now that we've seen these images, action is finally about to be taken. But I will say this: I mean, the president, I think you got to remember when he made this red line comment, he did it when he was running for office, and I don't think he really thought the entire element through what it really meant, what the actual threshold or criteria should be. Obviously, would there be hypocrisy considering what the Bush administration did in Iraq and Democrats that were maybe condemning that and now are supportive of this president doing this. So I think that there's a lot that maybe didn't get thought through early on. But the reality is something has to be done. I think it sounds like there's going to be action taken. Obviously, ground troops is not even in the equation, but there's some type of quick strike looks like it's going to happen here in the next few days.
And do you think that they will perhaps wait, Trey, if other countries will take action first, or do you think the U.S. will be the first to make any moves?
Well, it's a great question, because that's another interesting political dynamic. Do they wait for UN support? Now, that is an area where the president could get in trouble on this. I mean, if he sits around and kind of waits and lets the United Nations make the decisions on this, or let them kind of run the show, I think there's a lot of people, certainly on the Republican side, and maybe even some on the Democrat side that will not be too pleased with that, or don't think that that's really decisive action being taken. As well, he also may say, well, I'm not going to do it unless some of the other nations, join in. I think he does. I think there's a risk to doing that. Sure, in an ideal world, it would be having the support of the world to go in, but I think there's going to be a lot of people that certainly oppose it. I mean, we're seeing that folks in Great Britain are not supportive of this. France is always a question mark. And then you also have kind of nations that we've got concerns with anyway, and that nations like Russia who have been an ally of Syria's. How do they respond? How do they react to any type of military action by the U.S.? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
If there are no troops on the table and nobody has the stomach to send troops, that means some type of Tomahawk cruise missiles. What do you end up bombing, Trey Hardin? You can't bomb the chemical plants because that just releases the chemicals into the air that kills more people. You can't. I mean, what do they end up bombing?
Well, it's a good question because it would I don't think it would surprise anyone if Assad and his government almost tried to use the chemical weapons as shields, so to speak, by stockpiling them around maybe military installations that are likely targets that the U.S. would use to kind of demoralize the infrastructure and installations of the Syrian government and military. Almost like in the past we've seen, like in Iraq and other countries, where they've used humans as shield, or they've used children and women and or schoolhouses as to move things to kind of use those as shields. You can almost see them doing that with chemical weapons. So you're exactly right. It's going to be a very going to have to be very strategic, and there's going to have to be very strong intelligence that we're getting on these locations. But the reaction by the Syrian government and the military, I think, is really the X factor here, and it's going to be interesting to see how they respond, or what level of threat they will stand down on.
Trey, while we still have you a minute or two left, let's talk a little politics here closer to home, and that is, did I hear Mitch McConnell might be opposed from the right in his home state of Kentucky?
That's what I'm hearing. I mean, it seems like this Tea Party movement, or those on the far right, they're really just stuck to this idea of being right as opposed to solving problems. Now, listen, I mean, you and I've talked in the past. I'm conservative. I'm a lot of things about the Republican Party that we need to all be on the same page on when it comes to fiscal conservatism. But there's also political realities here, and I think it's one thing to have principles, but to be politically stupid is another thing. And I just think that there's some real serious miscalculations going on within the Republican Party right now. And the fact that you have some people that are willing to take out some of our current Republican leaders is just another example of that. And it just is another example also of the mess that I think this party is in right now. It's a leaderless party, and I think that depending on how they play things this fall, I think that they potentially risk their future for a very long time.
That's Trey Hardin, the inside of politics as well as the latest on Syria. Trey Hardin, ABC News political analyst. Thanks, Trey. Be safe. Talk to you next week.
You got it, buddy. Thank you.
628 here on the Big 550 KT.